Who is responsible for all these sufferings and failures? Some people try to justify that everything is normal and a reflection of divine will, putting the blame on nations as responsible for all prevalent vices and evils. They are of the opinion that it is the nations that succumb to discrimination and tyranny. It is the nation that surrender to dictatorship and greed. It is the nations that accept the hegemony of arrogant and expansionist powers. It is the nations that are influenced by the propaganda tactics of powers, and most all vices in our world are the result of their passive attitudes with the inclination to live under the supremacy of the world powers. These are the arguments raised by those who tend to blame nations for the unfavorable conditions prevailing in the world with the intention to justify the attitudes and destructive behaviors of the ruling minority. These claims, supposedly authentic, cannot in any way justify continuation of the present oppressive international order. Indeed, poverty is imposed on nations, and powers' ambitions and goals are pursued either through deceits or resort to force. To justify their inhuman actions, they propagate the theory based on the survival of the fittest. While in principle, most governments and nations of justice-seeking people are humble and submissive in the face of right and are after fostering dignity, prosperity, and constructive interactions. Masses of people never want to expand their territories, nor do they seek to obtain legendary wealth. They have no disputes among themselves in principles and have never played any role in the creation of any disastrous events in the course of history. I do not believe that Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and others have any problems among themselves or are hostile against each other. They get along together comfortably and live together in an atmosphere of peace and amity. They are all devoted to the cause of justice, purity, and love. The general tendency of nations has always been to accomplish positive common aspirations, reflecting exalted divine and human beauties and nobilities. The current abysmal situation of the world and the bitter incidents of history are due mainly to the wrong management of the world and the self-proclaimed centers of power who have entrusted themselves to the devil. The order that is rooted in the anti-human thoughts of slavery and the old and new colonialism are responsible for poverty, corruption, ignorance, and oppression and discrimination in every corner of the world. The current world order has certain characteristics, some of which are as follows. It is founded on materialism, and that is why it is in no way bound to moral values. It has been shaped according to selfishness, deception, hatred, and animosity. It believes in classification of human beings, humiliation of other nations, trampling upon the rights of others and their domination. It seeks to expand its domination by spreading discord and conflicts amongst ethnic groups and nations. It aims to monopolize power, wealth, science, and technology for a limited group. Policies of the world's main centers of powers are based on the principle of domination and the conquering of others. These centers only seek supremacy and are not in favor of peace and definitely not at the service of their nations. Are we to believe that those who spend hundreds of millions of dollars on election campaigns have the interest of the people of the world at their hearts? Despite what big political parties claim in the capitalist countries, the money that goes into election campaigns is usually nothing but an investment. In such countries, people have to vote for parties that only represent a small number of people. The will and views of the masses have the least impact and influence on the big decisions, especially those made about the major domestic and foreign policies in the United States and in Europe. Their voices are not heard, even if they constitute 99% of their societies. Human and ethical values are sacrificed in order to win votes, and the willingness to listen to the demands of the people has become only a tool at the time of election. The current world order is discriminatory and based on injustice. Distinguished friends and colleagues, what should be done and what is the way out of the current situation? There is no doubt that the world is in need of a new order and a fresh way of thinking, an order in which man is recognized as God's supreme creature, enjoying material and spiritual qualities, and possessing a pure and divine nature filled with a desire to seek justice and truth. An order that aims to revive human dignity and believes in universal happiness and perfection. 3. An order which is after peace, lasting security, and welfare for all walks of life around the globe. 4. An order that is founded upon trust and kindness and brings thoughts, hearts, and hands closer to each other's. Rulers must love people. 5. A just and fair order in which everybody is equal before law and in which there is no double standard. Leaders of the world must regard themselves as committed servants of their people, not their superiors. 7. Authority is a sacred gift from people to their rulers, not a chance to amass power and wealth. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, is it possible to have such an order without having everybody's contribution to the way the world is run? It is abundantly evident that when all the people and governments start to think and commit themselves to the above-mentioned principles and become sensitive to the internationally important issues and participate in decision-makings, their wishes will find a chance to be materialized. By raising collective awareness, the seeking of a joint global management becomes more vivid, with the chances of its implementation increase. Today is the day of nations, and their wants will determine the future of the world. Therefore, together, we need to place our trust in God Almighty and stand against the acquisitive minority with all our might, so that they become isolated and can no longer decide the destiny of other nations. 2. Believe in the God's bounty of blessing and mercy and seek it in the integration and unity of human societies. Governments emerging from the free will of nations must believe in their own ceaseless capabilities and know that they can achieve victory if they vigorously fight the unjust order and defend human rights. 3. Pave the ground for the joint global management by insisting upon justice in all its aspects, strengthen unity, friendship, and expand economic, social, cultural, and political interactions in independent and specialized organizations. 4. care about the interests of all the people of the world, and join hands to reform the current structures of the United Nations with our joint efforts and coordination. It is necessary to know that the United Nations belongs to all nations. Thus, the existence of discrimination amongst the members is a great insult to all. The existence of discrimination and monopoly in the United Nations is in no way acceptable. 5. Have more coordinated efforts to generate and propagate and firmly establish the language needed for designing the required structures of the joint global management filled with its justice, love, freedom, and amity. Participation in global management is the basis of lasting peace. The non-aligned movement, as the second largest trans-regional group after the United Nations, held its 16th summit in Tehran with the motto of joint global management, cognizant of the importance of this issue and the shortcomings of the current mismanagements in the emergence of crises and problems afflicting the world today. During the summit, participating heads of state and representatives of more than 120 countries underscored the necessity of a more serious and effective participation of all nations in the global management. Fortunately, we are now at a historic juncture. On one hand, Marxism is no longer around and is particularly eliminated from the management systems. And on the other, capitalism is bogged down in a self-made quagmire. And it has indeed reached a deadlock and does not seem to be able to come up with any noteworthy solution to the various economic, political, security, and cultural problems of the world. Non-aligned movement is proud to once again emphasize the rightfulness of its historic decision to reject the poles of power and the unbridled hegemony ruling the world. On behalf of the members of the non-aligned movement, I would like to invite all countries of the world to play a more active role in making it possible for everybody to contribute to the global decision-making processes in the world. The need to remove the structural barriers and encourage the process of universal participation in global management has never been greater before. The United Nations lacks the efficiency to bring about the required changes. If this inefficiency persists, nations will lose hope in the global structures to defend their rights. If the United Nations is restructured, international interactions and the spirit of collective global cooperation will be tarnished, and the standing of the United Nations will be damaged. The United Nations has been created with the purpose of expanding justice, and reinstitution of the universal rights has in practice been engulfed by discrimination, preparing a supportive ground for the domination of a few powerful countries. Consequently, UN's inefficiency has been on the rise. Moreover, the existence of the veto right and monopolization of power in the Security Council have made it nearly impossible to defend the rights of the nations. The issue of the UN restructuring is very vital and is a need that has been emphasized time and again by the representatives of nations, a goal that has not yet been accomplished.